welcome back to Bedtime Myths and Mysteries. Tonight's story is not about a castle or a cursed artifact or something that waited centuries to wake up. This story begins in a perfectly ordinary house on a perfectly ordinary street in North London, and then refuses to behave. If you grew up in the UK, you've heard whispers of it. If you didn't, you've still felt its shadow. Because the Enfield Poltergeist is not frightening for what it claims to prove, but for what it reveals about people. How fear spreads, how belief hardens, and how the line between truth and performance can rot quietly while everyone is watching. It starts the way all good hauntings do. Small, annoying, almost laughable. August 1977, Enfield, London, a council estate, rows of brick houses, narrow gardens, television aerials, the hum of traffic somewhere beyond the estate. No moors, no fog-wrapped graveyards, just number 284 Green Street, a home occupied by Peggy Hodgson and her 4 children. The first sound comes at night, a knocking, not dramatic, not thunderous, just a steady, hollow tapping coming from inside the house. Peggy assumes it's one of the kids messing around, the way children do when they're bored and want attention. She tells them to stop. They swear they aren't doing anything. Then the knocking moves. From the walls, from the floor, from places that shouldn't knock back. Furniture begins to slide. A chest of drawers shifts across the bedroom floor without hands on it. Lego bricks fly through the air, not once, but repeatedly, hard enough to leave marks. Beds shake, chairs tip. Objects appear where no one put them. At first, Peggy does what most people do when the world begins misbehaving. She looks for a practical explanation. Old pipes, drafts, kids playing tricks, stress, anything that doesn't involve the house itself, deciding to participate. But the activity escalates, and crucially, it doesn't stop when witnesses arrive. Neighbors come over, they hear the knocks, they see objects move, they watch furniture jerk and slide as if tugged by something that refuses to show its hands. Eventually, the police are called. This is where the story crosses an important threshold, because one of the responding officers later files a written statement describing a chair that moved on its own, sliding across the kitchen floor while no one touched it. Police officers do not usually volunteer to be laughed at. Word spreads, reporters arrive, and with them, investigators. Among the most prominent are members of the Society for Psychical Research, including Maurice Grosse and later Guy Lyon Playfair. They don't arrive looking for ghosts. They arrive looking for explanations. They install recording equipment. They take notes. They watch. They wait. And the house obliges. The phenomena begin to center on the Hodgsons' second oldest daughter, Janet, aged 11. She is the epicenter. When Janet is present, the house reacts. When she sleeps, the noises intensify. When she speaks, something speaks back. A voice begins to emerge, not whispered, not imagined, recorded. A deep, rasping male voice that claims to belong to a man named Bill Wilkins, who says he once lived in the house and died there. The voice speaks through Janet's mouth, using her vocal cords like borrowed equipment. It swears, it complains, it mocks, it answers questions. Anyone who has heard the recordings knows the sound. It's rough, damaged, too old for a child to sustain comfortably. Doctors later say producing it for long periods would be physically painful. Skeptics respond with an obvious suggestion: ventriloquism. Children can fake voices. Children can crave attention. Children can learn quickly when adults lean in. And they're not wrong to question it, because Janet is caught cheating. On multiple occasions, investigators observe her bending spoons, throwing objects when she thinks she's unobserved, even attempting to fake levitation. Photographs later surface showing her mid-air, but critics argue she's simply jumping. This becomes the crack in the case, the place where belief begins to bleed out. And yet, the phenomena do not stop when Janet is removed from the room. Objects still move. Knocks still answer questions. Recordings capture sounds when no one is speaking. Witnesses, journalists, researchers, neighbors experience events firsthand when the children are elsewhere. And this is where the Enfield case becomes truly uncomfortable, because it refuses to be clean. If it were all fake, it would be easy. A bored child, a stressed family, media attention snowballing into theater. Case closed. If it were all genuine, it would also be easier. A haunting, a presence, a tidy paranormal narrative. But it's neither. It's messy, contradictory, human. Peggy Hodgson does not behave like someone enjoying the attention. She looks exhausted, frightened, annoyed. She wants peace, not fame. The house becomes unlivable. Reporters camp outside. Skeptics accuse her of exploiting her children. Believers accuse skeptics of cruelty. And the children themselves, especially Janet, exist in a pressure cooker, watched constantly, questioned relentlessly, caught between adults who want proof and adults who want debunking. At night, the activity returns. Beds shake so violently the children scream. Furniture piles itself against doors. Drawers open and slam. A crucifix turns upside down. Scratches appear on walls. The voice speaks again, mocking prayers, laughing at investigators, claiming the house belongs to it. Playfair later describes moments when questions are answered through knocks. One knock for yes, two for no. Responses coming too quickly, too intelligently to dismiss easily. At other times, the house seems to sulk, falling silent for days, then erupting again. The British press turns it into a spectacle. Headlines oscillate between terror and ridicule. Television crews film inside the house. Viewers at home argue in pubs and living rooms. Ghost or hoax? And here's the detail that never sits comfortably with either side. The activity continues for over a year. Hoaxes burn out. Children get bored. Lies collapse under repetition. Yet the Enfield disturbances drag on, mutating, changing shape, growing dull, then sharp again. At one point, Janet is sent to stay with relatives. The phenomena diminish, but do not vanish entirely. When she returns, they resume with renewed intensity. Skeptics argue this proves she was the source. Believers argue this proves she was the focus, not the cause. And both sides have evidence. Medical professionals examine Janet. They note stress, dissociation, vocal strain. Nothing conclusive, nothing that solves the problem. The voice, if it is Janet, demonstrates knowledge she shouldn't have, recalling details about the previous occupant of the house that later check out. But memory is porous. Information leaks. People overhear things. The house itself offers no final statement. By 1979, the disturbances fade, not with a climax, not with an explanation, just with exhaustion. Investigators move on. The press loses interest. The family remains, carrying the aftermath like bruises you don't photograph. Years later, Janet grows up and speaks openly about parts of the case being faked. She admits to trickery. She admits to lying sometimes. But she never says all of it was fake. And that matters. Because if some of it was real and some of it wasn't, the question becomes far more disturbing than was it a ghost. The question becomes, what happens when fear, belief, stress, and attention create a feedback loop so powerful it behaves like an external force? What happens when a house becomes a stage and the human mind supplies the scenery? The Enfield Poltergeist doesn't ask you to believe in spirits. It asks you to confront something harder, that people under pressure can create experiences that feel utterly real, even when parts of them aren't. That a child can both lie and be terrified. That witnesses can both exaggerate and tell the truth. That skepticism can miss things and belief can invent them. And that sometimes the most honest answer is the least satisfying one. Maybe there was no ghost. Maybe there was. Or maybe the haunting was something uniquely human, an eruption of stress, trauma, suggestion, and expectation that took on a life of its own and refused to stop once it learned it had an audience. The house at 284. Green Street still stands. People live there. Life continues. No permanent haunting, no nightly terror. But the story remains because it doesn't resolve cleanly. It never did. And that's why the Enfield Poltergeist endures. Not as proof of the paranormal, but as proof that reality is more fragile than we like to admit, especially when watched. Because if a house doesn't need to be haunted to behave badly, what else are we blaming on ghosts that might actually be us? If you enjoyed tonight's story, subscribe to Bedtime Myths and Mysteries for more true cases where history, myth, and human nature collide. And leave a comment below with the mystery you want me to uncover next, while the house is quiet and before it decides to answer back. Good night.